Thank you everyone for joining us today. So we have Archana, and she'll be giving an introduction to edge computing. Um, yeah, so before we start, I wanted to talk a bit about our sponsors. So ARM is our strategic sponsor. So ARM is our strategic partner, and we have other sponsors like DeepLight, Edge Impulse, Maxim Integrated, Kixo, Reality AI, and Synsys. And if you want to, you can reach out to bet@tinyml.org for additional sponsorship. Tell you a bit about the local community in Singapore. So I'm Soham. I'm a machine learning engineer at Sleek, and we also have Archana, who is an AI engineer at Continental. And we are also looking for more people to join our local community. So if you're based in Singapore and you want to be a part of this community and help us organize events, please feel free to reach out to either of us, and you can be a part of our local committee as well. Archana is an AI engineer at Continental, and her work is in the field of automation, NLP, and edge computing and TinyML. About a year ago, she created a nano degree with Intel and Udacity about how you can use Intel's AI software for edge computing. Archana recently also, has been working a lot on TinyML. She's been doing a lot of research. So recently she did some research work on how TinyML can be applied in solar panels. So if you have questions about that, you can reach out to her as well after this. And yeah, so over to you, Archana.
Yeah, thank you so much for that really nice introduction, Soham. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I know it's pretty late in the evening and a little early in the morning for some of you. So, thank you so much for taking out the time to do this. And let me go ahead and give a kickstart to this presentation today. It's about introduction to deep learning for edge devices. And this talk is going to be pretty introductory, but at the same time, we're going to also give an overview of what's coming next. So this talk is by both of us. We both of us co-created the content for it. So hi, I'm Archana and Soham too. So let me go ahead and kickstart it. So we are doing this talk alongside Women Who Code. So Women Who Code is a non-profit organization whose mission is to inspire women to excel in technology careers. And our vision is to basically have a world where women are equal representatives, not only as maybe software engineers, but also as VCs, board members, technical executives, and founders too. And so let me go ahead and begin. So I'm gave a lovely introduction. I'm just going to add a few more things to it. Yes, I'm a AI engineer at Continental right now, and I recently graduated from NUS, which is also based out of Singapore. And my research was basically, as Soham said, it was in deep learning and smart grids. And I previously worked as a research engineer at Sama Technologies, working with NLP and virtual assistants. And I've also, had the opportunity to be a part of Udacity last year, wherein both I and Soham were instructors for Intel Edge AI for IoT developers. And I guess that's where my we were working a lot on Edge in Sama too. But like somehow towards what we learned there, we actually utilized that to build this course. And when we built this course, we realized that we wanted to actually expand because the course was quite limited to Intel as such, and we wanted to expand to other areas. And we thought, why not do a series and get people invited in and talk about edge computing and talk about what exactly we learned and maybe have a community. And TinyML gave us the exact and the perfect platform for doing so. So thank you so much for inviting me for giving this talk. And let me go ahead and start. So what exactly will you be learning today? So, what exactly will we be covering? We'll try to keep the session short, but at the same time interactive. That's our basic agenda. So we'll be talking about what exactly is edge computing. Why is edge computing so important? So especially if you're coming in new to the field and you don't know much about it, but you still want to learn. So this is like a perfect opportunity to this particular presentation will be right because it tells you why edge computing is important. And we'll talk about edge computing hardware too. So talk about a few hardware which is used in edge computing. And we will also go in depth in the next sessions, which will be talk about, which we will give you a brief about later. And we'll talk about algorithms. And one of the very interesting things that even Soham was saying yesterday was the fact that, edge computing has not only, it has all aspects to it. It not only has like a theoretical part to it, like, understanding why we need it, but it also has like algorithms, and it has hardware too. So there's like a different paradigms to venture into. And then we have edge computing software, and different toolkits that can be utilized for deploying these edge models. And then we conclude with why do we want to learn edge computing. So yeah, so basically, our idea behind this entire series or a study group is that we have a roadmap planned about how to do it. So this gives you an insight as to what's coming up next. So the first session, as you see, is this introduction. We're just going to give an introduction of what exactly is edge computing, and a brief into what is coming on later. But we will also do a deep dive into each of the topics, because we feel like there is enough content to cover for each now. So yeah, the session 2 will be about basics of running neural network on the edge, and we'll keep this much more hands-on. So obviously we have a little bit of a device constraint. Not everyone will have a device, but we'll make sure that we'll, for example, use Google Colab and try and understand how to run neural networks on the edge. And then this third session, which I'm actually pretty excited for, is quantization of neural networks. And then we will talk about hardware at the edge. So this might be similar to the course that I built, but will be expanded in various ways. So for example, the course I built was specifically for Intel hardware, but I'll also talk about other hardware that's present. And how do you choose which hardware to go? Like that's a very good question when we have like, when we, how do you come to a conclusion from hardware specifications that I need to pick this hardware for my project? So that is something we'll be covering in the session 4. Session 5 will be about pruning. Soham is nodding his head because he's going to be taking the session on. And this is a favorite topic about how to, figure out how to do pruning on neural networks and, utilize it. And we'll also talk about quantization versus pruning, because a lot of times when we look at an algorithm or like we look at a model as such, we don't immediately think about using these techniques, and it's important to use these techniques. So how do you come to a conclusion which has to be used where? So that is also something we will be covering. And then we will also cover a bit of research topics, because one of the things I've realized being in a field like deep learning as such over the last 2 to 3 years is that the only way to keep up with what's going on is to actively read research papers. So one of the research topics we'll be covering is early exits for neural network. And we'll also cover a few more research topics. They're like a set of interesting papers we want to go through. So if you're interested in that, please do join that session. And the session 7 will be about edge TPUs. Edge TPUs and edge TPU accelerators. And the last session, we'll actually be keeping about a mini project. So basically talking about, maybe doing a mini project with all of us. And if you guys are interested, we could, brainstorm on ideas that you want to go after. If you want to go after maybe specific Hackster competitions, we can do that too. But yeah, we can think about what to do. And what I want to say is that it's pretty open-ended. If in case like you are, like you work in the field and you want to have a chance to talk in the study group too, so we want to give you that opportunity too. So feel free to ping us and tell us that you're interested in giving a session, and we would love to have you too. So this is a pretty interactive and open-ended study group. And I guess we also already have like Q&A. It's not popping up.
So the question is, do you plan to do this weekly for next 8 weeks? So we'll do it. We'll try to do it either weekly or every 2 weeks, so that you also have time to digest everything and do some research on your own. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because I actually didn't say that. So we're planning to do it every 2 weeks as of now, but yeah, we can also try and get it like every weekly. and get get more conversation going. And that's one of the things that I've realized, is that we need a space to have conversations. So that is why this gives me a perfect opportunity to ask you to join our Slack group. So you can check out the Slack link on the chat. So can you post the Slack link?
Yeah, done.
Okay. So yeah, you can check out the Slack link on the chat. So what is exactly is that we have a channel called hashtag Edge Computing Study Group, and we will be basically posting research papers, the upcoming events, and also the YouTube recordings. We'll post it out there just in case anyone has missed it or wants to go over it again. You can do that too. And we'll also be we'll keep some discussions on, we will maybe talk about some interesting topics that come up. So all of that, we want to keep it on our Slack group too, such that we have the conversation going. So, in middle, you don't feel like we're just coming in for 2 weeks and just leaving you, blank and not talking about the study group as such. So to keep the conversation going, feel free to check out the Slack link on the chat and join us. And we're going to make sure we keep talking about edge computing in some or the other way. And we also have this QR code link here, just in case you don't want to check out the chat. We totally understand. You can just scan this QR code using your phone or something and check out the Slack group. I'll just pause here for a minute or so that you can join in. And if anyone has questions or anything else they want to ask me, feel free to do that.
I don't think we have any other questions. Maybe we can move ahead.
Sure. Okay, and just in case you want to, get the Slack link again, we can come back to it in the end. So yeah, let me just jump right in and talk about Internet of Things. The sort of the thing that produces edge computing as such. So IoT devices, as we know, are a system of interconnected devices that use sensors to capture data. And they can also be used to run simple tasks, and have become obviously really popular in the several years that we know. So you can actually see the trend here of number of global active connections that are there, IoT based and non-IoT based. And you can see, as you see the trends, we are actually increasing in the number of devices that are present in the world. Like I read some stats, like we have like around 6 billion devices right now. So that means we have a lot of devices which are connected, and obviously one thing we know about devices which are connected to the internet, we know that they are obviously producing a lot of data. So they can collect, transfer data, as well as perform simple tasks. And they're used for as simple as the fitness devices that we wear to smart home devices. All of that uses IoT. But one of the things we realized is that IoT data, 99% of IoT data, as the survey suggests, is the fact that these IoT data, sensor data, is actually discarded. So and so this means that it is we need to find a way to get utilize this IoT sensor data. So yeah, most DL models are deployed on cloud servers, and running models close to where data is generated is what is called edge computing. So basically, we realize that we are losing out on a lot of IoT data. So we want to make sure that we're running models right where the data is generated, so that we don't lose it. And we're also able to deploy DL models. And that exactly is edge computing. So what are the advantages of edge computing when you come into it? So there is obviously an increase in IoT devices, which causes an increase in cloud dependency that we know already. And there's a need to have edge devices which have their own data centers, which is exactly what I iterated in the last slide. And this computing is often called edge computing, and the applications are many. So we have, for example, security cameras. So for example, you can have a security camera outside your house that maybe detects a person walking by, maybe outside a bank or something. So that is an edge computing use case. And then you also have self-driving cars which use edge computing. So one of the very famous examples that I give is, for example, imagine that you are in a self-driving car that's going through a tunnel, and it suddenly loses, obviously you don't have connection to the internet all the time, and suddenly has to apply a brake. So if it suddenly has to apply a brake, you wouldn't want it to contact the server, which might be sitting miles and miles away. You would want it to have its own data center or have its own decision making tool there, such that it decides, okay, I need to apply this brake and I need to save the person inside. So that's a crucial point there. So that is one of the places where edge computing can be perfectly used. And there are various advantages of edge computing. There's reduced latency, which means that you don't, as I said, with a self-driving use case, you don't actually have to send data back and forth to the cloud. You can run the model right there. Like obviously you have to train it on the cloud, but you can run the inference right then and there. And there is reduced internet bandwidth too. So that's one of the very interesting use cases. I like recently came across this very interesting project on Hackster, which is about um, detecting roars of lions in the wildlife. So, I mean, if you are, for example, deploying anything in wildlife, you probably will not have internet bandwidth at all. So those use cases are also very crucial to us, because in such cases, edge computing fits perfectly. You can run your models right there in the wild too. So yeah, and there's increased security. You don't always have to. There's no data leak as such. There's no data that is going back and forth from the device to the cloud. So your data is actually well bound to the device, and therefore there's increased security on there. And there's overall, what we want is a reduction on cloud services, thereby being able to use this device in a mobile way, being able to take it anywhere and being able to run models on it. So yeah, but what are the different kind of edge computing hardware? So this is like we come towards the second section now, and they're microprocessors. So microprocessors are much more general purpose. They're more powerful, and they consume more power. So for example, a Raspberry Pi is a microprocessor, and we also have microcontrollers. So microcontrollers are used for much more simpler tasks, and they're less computationally powerful, and they consume less power. So something like your Arduino Uno is actually a microcontroller. And then you have accelerators too. So accelerators are specialized to perform one single task, and they're smaller and more power efficient. Less maybe power efficient than a microcontroller, but somewhere in between, you can suppose. But yeah, and they're computationally powerful. So one of the things that uh, we have realized, especially in the deep learning community, is that accelerators fit perfect for our use case, because we are able to make it perform a specific task, thereby making it really specialized. And that is why you'll hear a lot about using accelerators for performing edge computing tasks. Yeah, so we also have some process like this, some other processes like Jetson AGX, which is also present. So yeah, microprocessors are Raspberry Pi 4. These are like, as I said, they're like general purpose microprocessor. It actually consumes 15 watt of power consumption, and yeah, like a quad core, and yeah, it supports multiple programming languages and frameworks. On the other hand, you also have Edge TPU dev board. So this is actually by Google, and it has a Raspberry form factor, but it consumes only 10 watt of power. So you can actually even just compare it right here. So one of the things I talked about, right, when you look into edge computing, you have to decide what hardware do I have to use. You oftentimes you'll have to compare what is available and then make a decision about, shall I be investing in this versus that. So even out here, you can see like obviously it consumes lesser power. So if you have a use case which consumes lesser power, you would rather go for that. And it also supports the TF Lite framework, which I think is very useful, because TF Lite has its own, which also we'll be talking about later on, is that TF Lite also gives its own toolkit for supporting, for example, quantization. So yeah, that makes it easier to deploy it. And then we
Yeah,
also have micro. Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of jump in here and also mention that so with Edge TPU dev board, right, things get a little fuzzy. So it's not like like just a few devices are microprocessors, and there are like only microcontrollers. Sometimes the boundary kind of it gets meshed up. And so like a dev board is an interesting board because it actually has an accelerator inside it. So it's kind of like an accelerator plus microprocessor. And yeah, so it's really fun, like working with hardware, because like there's just so many things, and there's definitely going to be one that will match your use case. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Archana.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point that you brought up, that uh, we have a lot of things to work around with, a lot of things to learn. So yeah, let me go on to microcontrollers now. So Arduino Uno. So Arduino Uno is based on the 80 mega 328 microcontroller. It has like 32 kilobytes of flash memory, and I'm like the other parts of the memory as such. And it basically is compatible with or Arduino IDE, so you can work on the development environment like that. And then we also have ESP32, which is also like it's used for Wi-Fi, BLE, etc. And that is also a microcontroller. And then we have, this is the most interesting part, and which is very interesting to us in the edge computing field, is neural network accelerators. So you actually have the neural compute stick on this end. So the neural compute stick is actually by Intel, and it's like a USB stick. So you can just plug it to your computer, or you can even plug it to your Raspberry Pi or anything else that you use. And it has like a pen drive form factor, as I said. And very interesting part of it is that it only consumes 1 watt of power. As I said, it's quite low power consumption. Even amongst the other accelerators that Intel provides, it actually has the lowest. And it is like, it has a very interesting processor called Myriad. So it has the Myriad X processor, and it has a neural compute engine, which is used specifically for performing like basically running neural networks and performing matrix operations. And it uses the OpenMiner toolkit, which is also interesting because the OpenMiner toolkit, which we will discuss later in one of our sessions, which also provides you a way to use intermediate representations and take your model and deploy it on this neural compute stick, making it easier for you to use it in your own project. And we also have the Edge TPU here. So the HTPU is another one which has like a pen drive form factor, which is great because you can plug it again to your maybe your TPU board, or even if not, you can also plug it to your Raspberry Pi and so on. And it also has an HTPU accelerator, and it uses the TF Lite framework. So pretty great there too, because you can use that toolkit in order to run your devices, or the framework in order to run your devices. And yeah, this brings us to edge computing algorithms. So why is there a need for going towards edge computing algorithms? What we realized is that like a lot of times when you read research papers, and when you constantly read about new models coming up, you'll realize this: most of them are actually they run it on the GPU, even for inference, and you realize that they require a massive amount of computational power, because if you take your CPU, your GPU, even your laptop, for instance, it'll easily consume around 140 watts of TDP, versus your phone or other microcontrollers, which consume very, very less. As I've showcased, like a microcontroller or a microprocessor might consume between like 2 watts to 15 watts. So that's quite less in comparison, which means that uh, why is there a need to use it? Because like these traditional algorithms or the traditional models as such are only constrained to be using in CPUs and GPUs. And one of the other things which is sort of like is so important about neural networks is the fact that they're composed of floating point values, and they're generally trained to preserve the accuracy, not the speed. Which means is that your neural networks are quite massive, and this is why we need to come from like a floating point value to precision values too. So yeah, and we have memory constraints. For example, laptops and PCs come with at least 4 GB of memory. Your own laptop, for example, will at least have like a 4 GB memory. Whereas when you come to a smaller device, it actually has only 1 GB of memory. So how do you design algorithms which run in such a small memory? And this influence efficiency at the end of the day, which means that we want to make sure that our models take less time for inference. So this is like a point of influx. Like I feel like we always like somewhere or the other, the way that an edge computing a person who works with around edge computing or TinyML as such, thinks about things is quite different from a traditional deep learning researcher, maybe, because we always, first and foremost, we always think about the time taken to run the model. Like our inference time matters more than the accuracy. Our model can be moderately accurate. It doesn't have to have like a 99% accuracy, but at the same time, we don't. It doesn't need to have like a 99% accuracy, but we want to make sure that it has like a moderate accuracy, maybe 90%, maybe 85%. It depends on your use case. But the most important thing for us that it's fast, that it's taking less inference time on the edge. So that is the thing where we focus our attention to, the inference efficiency. And you will see that happening a lot, that a lot of people will talk about the inference efficiency as such. Then we have edge computing algorithms. So we obviously talked about the hardware. We talked about why we need to move towards edge computing algorithms, which brings us the introduction into edge computing algorithms. So the problem, as we said, we have less compute, less memory, and high accuracy. And so we need to come up with algorithms. So one of it is separable convolutions. And then we have quantization, as I talked about, pruning, and then knowledge distillation. So these are the algorithms we'll be talking about. We'll also add some more to it. And yeah, so separable convolutions are basically, they change the, so separable convolutions changes the standard convolution operation into two separate convolutions. So the first one is depth-wise convolution, and the second one is point-wise convolution. So what we're trying to do is we reduce the number of weights that are needed to be stored, and we reduce the number of operations that are required. So if in a traditional way, or like, I'm not going to dive too deep into it because we will take it up again in the session when we talk about algorithms. But here, I'm just going to give you like a high level overview. So the number of, the number of operations that are performed by a standard convolution are basically split into two separate convolutions. And hence, it reduces the number of operations that are needed, and we're able to run it faster for the edge. So yeah, so that basically contains of a depth-wise convolution and a point-wise convolution. So yeah, let me look into what is the difference between the normal convolution versus a separable convolution. And what we realize in the end is that we have a total savings wherein we're using almost 22 times lesser than a normal convolution. So how exactly does this happen? So when we look at the normal convolution, we look at, how we do it. So we actually multiply the kernel dimension into input channels into the output width and height with the number of output channels, obviously. But yeah, and I don't want to dive too deep into the math. Just know this much, that the total flops are actually a lot, because basically in your algebra here, we are doing like multiplication. So obviously the number of flops increases. But with separable convolution, like I said, we have a depth-wise and a point-wise convolution. What we are trying to do with the total flops is we are actually adding two aspects. So what happens is when you use an addition is that you actually end up saving, and the number of flops reduces. So when you actually take this, let me just get it. Yeah. So when you take these flops and you divide it by the normal convolution flops, we actually have a savings of this much, which means that we are able to use the separable convolution in a better manner. And the total number of flops is almost 22 times lesser than the normal convolution, which makes it perfect for us, which makes it perfect to use these separable convolutions for edge computing use case. Which brings me to the second part, which I said I'm the most interested in, because we have worked a lot around quantization as such. And so quantization is basically where, as I said, neural networks are composed of floating point values. And these floating point values may be 64-bit or 32-bit. And what we want to do is that we want to convert these floating point values into int 8 bits. And when we convert it into int 8 bits, we are there is a loss to accuracy that happens since we lose precision. But at the same time, we are also making sure that, this is what is quantization really plays a role, that, when we convert it from a higher bit to a lower bit, we're actually saving on the compute. Hence, we are able to run our models much more efficiently and are able to save the memory. So yeah, that is basically quantization, but it's also a huge topic on its own. There are various types of quantization, and this is especially covered well by the TensorFlow toolkit, TensorFlow Lite toolkit, and we can, we'll do a session specifically on this, and we'll make sure it's hands-on, so is that you guys also get to try the toolkit and get to try how exactly quantization is helping. And I mean, it's also a give or take, right? At the same, there will be a loss to an accuracy. We want to be as realistic as possible here. So I want to say, yes, there will be a loss of accuracy, which you will notice. But at the same time, you will notice that the models are being computed far quicker, and we are able to see that the model size drastically reduces, while making sure that we are having the same like converting the weights, but we're able to do the same operations as such. So yeah, and then we have model pruning too. So model pruning is basically where weights can be pruned, and prune means you're basically removing these weights and these neurons, and executing networks is like efficiently a bit difficult, but it is helped by using structured sparsity. So you're actually removing weights here, and you get a structured sparsity, which helps to essentially pruning these blocks of weights. So this is also something we will be covering. And let me move on to the next slide. And then one of the other methods where we have is, we have knowledge distillation. So in knowledge distillation, the first step is to process a teacher model. The teacher model is usually a large and a complex model, and then it can also be an ensemble of multiple models. And the second step is to get inputs or the outputs from the softmax layer of the teacher model, and then use these outputs as soft labels. And then we use these to train the student on the soft outputs that we get from the previous step. And this training is done using normal gradient descent. And basically, we have a teacher-student model. So yeah, this is what is knowledge distillation. And then we have edge computing frameworks. So I guess this is the most, one of the most interesting parts. We have obviously talked about algorithms as such, but when we come into edge computing frameworks, this means that we have ready to go frameworks where we can just use it then and there and deploy it. So that makes it so much easier for us, like how we have Keras, PyTorch, and TensorFlow existing for deep learning as such. We have something similar for edge computing. We have TensorFlow Lite, we have OpenMino. TensorFlow Lite, as I said, supports quantization, pruning, weight clustering, and support for HTFU, which is also very good, because we're able to take models and deploy it right on the HTFU. And then we also have OpenMino. So OpenMino also supports quantization. And very interesting thing about OpenMino is that it has something called intermediate representations, where you basically take your model, convert it into IR format, and then be able to, deploy it. And this is something also we will be covering. And we have support, you have support for NCS and other Intel hardware. Like NCS is the neural compute stick that we noticed before. And you have other Intel hardware too, like the FPGA, which also supports the OpenMino toolkit. And there are others as well. You have ONNX, and then you have PyTorch, and you have DeepStream. So I had actually the opportunity to work on Jetson AGX a couple months ago. And I realized that DeepStream, which is offered by NVIDIA, it's also a great open source tool, which helps you like take your model and actually deploy it to NVIDIA devices. So if you're interested in that, we could do a session just for that too. But yeah, it's totally dependent on your interest levels. If you guys are interested to work on NVIDIA devices, we can definitely go over that too. And yeah, so at the end, we want to know, why exactly do we want to learn edge computing? We want to stay classy in your new job, definitely. But what are the job prospects here? So it's an up and coming field. It is a niche field because at the end of the day, you are working with microcontrollers as such, but you can maybe compare it to NLP, or maybe, like other, like for example, reinforcement learning and deep learning. So like, it's different paradigms altogether. And these are like different sections, you might say, and something of that sort. We have like edge computing too. It's up and coming, but it is a niche field under deep learning. And edge computing concepts and optimization can be applied to other areas. So as I said, when you're learning about edge computing, you can also learn about how to, for example, when you deploy your model onto a cloud server, can I also like quantize it? Can I reduce the model size? Yeah, I mean, you can, whatever you learn here, you can also use it for use cases which might not involve edge computing. You can do that too. And you also have research aspect to it. It's a very active area of research because we are still, I think, at the start of this phase where we are discovering new algorithms which will fit perfectly. So that is there. And what are the various like projects we can do? So edge computing is a great way to put intelligence in your projects. Like yesterday we saw this very interesting, I guess. I think I saw it on Twitter. Like someone came up with this sort of device for detecting coffee. And yeah, so I mean, you could use sensors for doing that too. And it has a great community. So you have people on Twitter, you have people everywhere. The TinyML Foundation, as such, is a community that supports edge computing. So you can all come back here, you can listen to their talks, and you can figure out what's happening in the field, what are the new areas that you can look into, and learn more about it. So yeah, that is why you should be learning edge computing. And we will also talk about some interesting research papers, as I said, throughout our the series and our study group as such. We'll be talking about why exactly should we add early exits to neural networks. So this is very interesting. I talked about it. So I gave a small workshop on it in ICML last year. But we will talk about why exactly should we add early exits to neural networks. We'll also talk about a very interesting paper that I want to talk about is quantization of recurrent neural networks. So why I want to talk about it is that I was recently using a time series data for deploying on the edge, and I realized there's not an equivalent of quantizing LSTMs. But this paper came out very recently, like last month. But I wish I had this paper while I was writing my thesis. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept. It's very new. I have to apply how to apply quantization to recurrent neural networks. And we also have like the quantization paper from Google, I believe, which is dated to 15th December, like 2017, which is almost like 3 years before this. But yeah, I mean, we'll also talk about some of the fundamental papers which brought about this change in edge computing. So yeah, which brings me to the end. I hope you guys enjoyed my session. I hope it was a quick session. I hope you were able to understand what we are going to be covering next. Do let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Archana. So there's like a really interesting question that someone asked anonymously, and I want to take that at the end. But another question that Bismillah asked is, do models for edge computing have to be trained from scratch, or can we use pre-trained weights for edge computing? Archana, do you want to take that up?
Sure, if you want, you can take that up. I'm going to have a sip of water.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Bismillah, the answer is, models for edge computing are not actually trained from scratch. Ideally, what happens is you train your model on a powerful computer, like, with multiple GPUs, because training models is very difficult. It takes a lot of compute, and people haven't really figured out a good way to train it on the edge. Even though there are a few works that do that, and maybe we can cover it later on, but in general, you train models on the cloud, or on a very powerful computer, and then you convert that model to a model that can be deployed to the edge. So you can convert that using some of the algorithms that Archana mentioned today, like quantization, pruning, and so on. How you would use pre-trained weights for edge computing is, like you can do transfer learning, like you mentioned, on your cloud, and then convert your model to an edge computing model. So yeah, that's pretty much how that happens. Um, yeah, so there was this really interesting question, Archana. So someone asked, is there an estimate of the global power consumption of edge devices, and how much of that power is actually wasted when we discard data? So honestly, like I don't have a lot of idea about that. Maybe you have some thoughts about that.
I mean, we know as such, obviously, when we amount of devices we have around us, we obviously are consuming more power by the day. But in essential, just talking about the power aspect, when we, like in the near future, as I believe, at least in 3 years, as edge computing does take off and we are able to produce good algorithms which are really efficient towards the edge and are performing almost the same computation as much as the traditional algorithm, like are really comparable in that terms to almost in all sections as possible, like not only maybe in LSTMs or convolutions or computer vision we see, but maybe in other fields as well, like for example, reinforcement learning, NLP. Can we design algorithms which are really, really efficient for the edge? I feel like we are moving a little further away from CPUs, GPUs as such. And what that will actually provide us is with the opportunity of, designing, like moving away from these very power hungry devices, right? And going to these smaller devices as such, which are actually consuming less power. So I think maybe in the short run, when we think about it, we see, oh my God, there are a lot of devices around us which are consuming power. And we also have this big CPU and GPU sitting around, which also consumes way too much power. But I think we have to think about it in comparison. Like maybe a few years from now, we will start moving away from CPU, GPUs, and maybe might be reliant on these devices for computation after all. But yeah, that's just a hope.
Yeah, absolutely, and I actually agree with that. So the more like as we progress, one of the challenges that researchers are trying to solve is how do we make our devices more power efficient, so that they last longer. What I mean by that is a lot of edge computing devices are deployed in places where you can't actually give it power through, like a plug point. So you have to power it using batteries, and in that case you have to your devices need to consume very, very little power so that it lasts longer. So for instance, like in my research, like last year I helped build this chip that consumes like only 25 milliwatts of power, which is really, really less. Like if you have a standard 6000 milliamp hour battery, that will last for more than a year if I'm not wrong, or maybe a few years if you use it really efficiently. So yeah, the amount of like I'm not sure how what is the current estimate of how much power is being lost when we don't use all the data, or like how much power is used by all edge devices. But in the future, I'm hoping that it gets lesser, because that's one of the challenges that people are trying to solve. Okay, so before we move on to the next question, I wanted to say a few more things. So if you stick around to the end, we'll actually open this up to everyone so that everyone can speak, and we can discuss about how you want the study group to move forward, and we can get your feedback instead of you typing it. We know that's very like no one wants to type a huge message, right? So we'll open this up and we can all talk about it. Okay, so Anusya asked, should we really require a hardware to work in edge computing, or are there any simulators available? Archana, you want to take that up, and maybe I can add
Yeah,
something.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. That's a very interesting question, actually. So, like, one of the things, like, it's not only about hardware, Anusya, it's also about the fact that you want to make sure that, the hardware that you're going to investing, that you're going to buy eventually is going to be the right one. So, actually, Intel came up with this really nice thing called Intel Dev Cloud. You can check it out. I bet there are a few credits for people who just want to use it. It's called Intel Dev Cloud for the Edge. And what it provides is a way to use devices on the cloud. So basically, they will give you access to FPGA, VPU, the NCS stick. They also give you access to CPUs. And so Intel has it has its GPU on the CPU chip itself, like basically it's like a separation and keeps the GPU. So you can actually use the GPU too. and see the performances. So basically, you can take your model, run it on the Intel Dev Cloud for the edge, and make a decision. Okay, if my device is able to run, sorry, my model is able to run quickly on this device versus that, so probably I should purchase that. So it's also the other way around, that you need to also use, so maybe like, I wouldn't say a simulator per se, but yeah, like some devices on the edge, on the cloud, if possible, like for example this, to just make a decision on which device to buy. I hope that answers it. And I can also drop over the link. It's called Intel Dev Cloud for the edge. You can check it out. I think it's available online. But you might have to like, it only will be available for some certain credits, almost like GCP. But yeah, I'll have to check that. You can check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I dropped the link in the chat in case you're interested. In addition to that, I also kind of want to say that, um, because all of these devices are very small and very simple, um, a lot of times they aren't actually very costly. So Raspberry Pi, which is like a pretty powerful computer, it's like for like $35. And like 3 years ago, there were times when my laptop would crash, and I would use my Raspberry Pi as my work computer. So it's really powerful, and you can get that as well. So whenever people ask me, like, if I want to start working in edge computing, like what's a hardware that I can buy that I can use for a lot of projects, I always tell them to get like either a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino, or maybe like, if you want to work with Wi-Fi and stuff, then you can get an ESP32 instead of an Arduino. And these are like very cheap devices that you can get easily. I'm not sure if there are any online simulators available for them, but like Archana mentioned, if you can get online simulators for using Intel's Dev Cloud as well. So yeah, thank you, Anusha, for that question. So Nitesh has a question. What he's asking is, what are the tools that you use when implementing edge computing? So like Anaconda, Python IDE, Google Colab, like what are the tools that you usually need?
Mm, As in, like, obviously, I mean, the OpenVINO toolkit, it, like, supports, like, as far as we know, like, both the TF Lite and the OpenVINO toolkit are just ways to basically take your model and convert it into a certain format and then deploy it to the edge. So that's all the toolkit does. But apart from that, it's as similar to any other deep learning project that you do.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So if you want to train a model, you would use like Colab or like Anaconda, your Python IDE, and so on, whatever you use normally to train a model. And after that, you can if you want to use like say something like TF Lite, then you can again use Google Colab and convert your model. But then after that, when you have to deploy it to your to a device, so some devices like microprocessors are like general purpose computers, and they have their own IDE on their own in embedded
Mhm.
inside it. So you can use the IDE
True, true.
inside it to deploy the model. But other devices like microcontrollers are more simple, so they don't usually have their own IDE. In the sense, like you have to use something like so you have to connect your Arduino to your laptop and then use an
Mhm.
IDE on your laptop, and then that will transfer your code into the Arduino. So that's how you work usually.
True, true, true.
Uh,
Mm.
okay, so I don't think there are any other questions.
I just
Um,
wanted to piggyback on what Anusia said. So another thing that I think we should have mentioned before is that we will also probably like, not maybe in this session, but maybe towards the mini project and towards the series as we progress, we'll also give you some ways to maybe enter contests. Like for example, there are a few websites where you can just enter contests and win free hardware. And that can give you a quick start into working into edge computing and TinyML as such. And also, when you look into these contests, what it helps you do is it helps you come up with an idea and follow it through, get the hardware, and go to a phase where you can actually deploy it and get it working as a use case. Like, so I think like that's also a perfect way to start in case you don't want to invest in a hardware and you don't want to you're still figuring out the field, and so you don't want to invest in it immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. So like websites like Hackster, Instructables, they
Yeah.
keep having contests where they give free hardware, and you can always apply and get some free hardware. So I actually got some
Yes.
free hardware just a few weeks ago, and it's a new device. And I'm really excited to work on it. But yeah, you can do that as well. Okay, so if you can like stick around for a few more minutes, and then we'll open up the open this up for everyone. Um, but before that, Archana, could you move on to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention some of the sponsors of this event again. So ARM is a TinyML strategic partner, and some of the other sponsors are DeepLight, Edge Impulse, Maxim Integrated, Kixo, Reality AI, as well as Synsets. Archana, could you move to the next slide? Thank you. So yeah, ARM is the software and hardware foundation for TinyML, and they have a lot of resources at developer.arm.com. Next slide, please. Yeah. DeepLight uses AI to make other AI faster and smaller as well as more efficient. And you can become a beta tester at bit.ly/test DeepLight. Next slide, please, Archana. Yeah. Maxim Integrated is also this company that builds a lot of hardware for Edge. And the new Max 78,000 implements AI inferences at over 100 times lower energy than other embedded options. And now the Edge can see and hear like never before. Um, yeah. Quixo is the AutoML platform for embedded AI, and it builds TinyML solutions for the Edge. And finally, Synsense builds ultra low power, sub-milliwatt sensing and inference hardware for embedded mobile and edge devices. And they design systems for real-time and always-on smart sensing for audio, vision, IMUs, biosignal, and more. Yeah, and finally, so next Tuesday on Feb 16th, we have another TinyML talk. It's by Mohammed Zubair from the King Khalid University, and he's going to talk about oral tongue lesion detection using TinyML on embedded devices. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much for joining us.